Get started, everybody. Oh, great. Thank you very much for recording. Commissioner Stevenson, we're just going to put, oh, there you go. Okay, thanks a lot. Just had a little background noise. Welcome, everybody, to the Joint Policy Advisory Committee meeting today. I've said this already. I'll say it again to those of you who didn't hear. Sorry, we're not feeding you lunch today. We would have loved to have you at our office, but our air conditioning was out this morning, and so we thought better to be safe than sorry. Of course, as these things go, the air conditioning is working now. So c'est la vie. We all have to do this remotely. But nonetheless, we're happy to have everybody together. As a reminder, JPAC, the Joint Policy Advisory Committee, is a somewhat unique group in states around the nation. Here in Utah, we pride ourselves on our collaboration among transportation agencies. And JPAC is one of the structures for that collaboration. We bring together all the transportation agencies in the state, staff and elected officials to collaborate to plan for the future of Utah's transportation. At the heart of that, of course, is Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. But there's lots of topics at play affecting transportation. And in today's meeting, we've just got chock full of, I would call them pretty quick hits on a whole variety of topics. Andrea has dropped the agenda for today's meeting into the chat. You can take a look at that. But what I'm going to do first is we're going to do introductions sort of around the state. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to challenge folks. We'll go to one person from each agency, and then that person has to note who's on from their agency and the elected officials representing their area. Okay, so we'll start with the easy one because I think it's just the staff with UDOT, and I see Terry. Terry, would you introduce your folks from UDOT, please?
Thanks for letting me start out, Andrew.
Welcome.
I've got to get back to my view where I can see who all is on here. Really quick scanning. Ben Hewitt is here. We've got Ryan Bailey here. Leif Elder here. Andrea Olson. Carlos Braceras, Eileen Barron. Good luck, everybody else, scanning all the list of names here. I think that was it for UDOT.
Thanks, Terry. Well, a great mix of leadership, planning, government affairs. Carlton, how about UTA?
I should have paid you more money, Andrew. Let's see. I will acknowledge my colleague, Beth Obrecht. I also saw our Director of Governmental Affairs, Shul Bishop. Let's see, looking through this real quick. Nicole Bardot, who's our one of our executives over public engagement and planning. And I think that's it. If I've missed somebody, I apologize.
Okay, great. Thanks, Carlton and UTA friends. Now let's go to start with we'll go to each of the MPOs, and let's start with MAG. And I don't know, Andrew Jackson, would you like to introduce the folks on from MAG?
Yes, so we have, of course, myself, or I wouldn't be talking. We have Commissioner Powers Gardner from Utah County, Mayor Fulmer from Vineyard, Lanice from MAG, and Sean Elliott from MAG.
And I know Michelle Carroll is also from MAG, but is sitting at WFRC. Okay, now Jeff Gilbert from Cash MPO.
Hi, everyone. Jeff Gilbert, Cash MPO. Mayor Brian Cox, our CMPO chair, is normally with us, but he's out of town, as is Todd Butler from Cache Valley Transit. So just me today.
Okay, you have the heavy burden of responsibility for your area then, Jeff.
I'll do my best.
Great, great. And Myron Lee from Dixie MPO. Where is Myron?
doesn't look like he has arrived back yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, Myron will be on. And then, Commissioner Elmquist, I'll turn to you then to introduce. Commissioner Elmquist from Washington County. Do I have that right? Maybe he's grabbing lunch. Okay. And then for the WFRC area, I'm Andrew Gruber, Executive Director. Ted Knowlton, our Deputy Director, is in the conference room there. Jory Johnner, our Manager of Long Range Planning. Julie Bjornstad, Transportation Planner. And Miranda Jones-Cox, Government Affairs Manager. Let's see, I think that's everybody. Oh, Mike Sobchak, our Communications Manager. And then from our elected officials, we've got Mayor Berube from North Ogden. We've got Mayor Palmer from Harriman, who's joined also by Nathan and Tammy from Harriman. Thank you. Mayor Ramsey from South Jordan, who chairs our Regional Growth Committee. We've got Mayor Silvestrini from Mill Creek, who's the chair of our council. We've got Commissioner Fackrell from Morgan County. We've got Commissioner Stevenson from Davis County, former chair of WFRC. We've got Mayor Staggs from Riverton. Let's see, if I'm missing anybody else. Oh, Commissioner Frohr from Morgan County. I think that's it from our.
Gage is from Weber County. Gage is from Weber County, not Morgan.
That'd be Weber County.
Did I say Morgan County? Oh, well.
I'm not ready to move yet. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for the.
We're trying to get him to move up to Morgan County, but we haven't found success yet.
Hey, we can always find a place for you.
Commissioner Frohr, you kind of straddle him a little bit. So,
Yeah,
maybe
it's close. I live close to Morgan.
I pushed you east. I pushed you east just a little bit. Okay, great. And then we also have several other friends and colleagues with us. I see Colby from GOPB. I'm assuming it's Muriel or somebody from X Factor Strategies. Our friends from Federal Highway Administration. Brigitte, would you like to introduce the folks from FHWA, please?
Sure, thank you. We've got Jennifer Elskin, our planner and program development team leader, is on, and Ivan Marrero, our division administrator. If he's not on yet, he will be joining us shortly. He's running in, he's got another meeting right now, but he'll be coming on later.
Okay, great.
I'm on.
There he is.
I'm here. They're back.
Okay.
It was a big lunch.
I should also know, thank you very much, Ivan. I realized I missed saying Helen Peters from Salt Lake County, works with Mayor Jenny Wilson, is joining us here as well. Okay. Doing one last scan of the room. Oh, Peter Asplin from UDOT. Thanks for joining today. And Ryan Levitt, who works with WFRC and UTA on federal affairs. Now, is there anybody else who wasn't introduced that wants to declare themselves here? Okay, that'll cover it. All right, let's just jump in. I'm going to note to everybody that we've got no more than 10 minutes scheduled per topic, and in fact, on many of our topics, we have only 5 minutes scheduled. I'm going to real quick just point everybody. Hopefully you can see this. Here's our list today. We're going to start with the Unified Transportation Plan, and then we're going to go rapid fire through economic impacts, transportation electrification, TIF and TTIF prioritization, joint statewide grid study, UEOC issues, statewide growth conversation, and federal performance measures. Whew, right? There's a lot to cover today. So let's just jump right in on unified transportation. Oh, no, first let's approve the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 2nd, please?
Motion to approve.
Second from anybody?
Second.
Warren.
Okay, well, I saw get Commissioner Frohr from Weber County say that first, so let's do that. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, Commissioner Fackrell's grandchildren seem to be opposing, but they don't have a vote. So we'll consider that unanimous
I'm
adoption.
sorry.
It's okay. It's Commissioner, it's great. We love it, in all honesty. Okay, let's go right ahead. And I think I'm going to turn to Julie Bjornstad from WFRC to talk about, give us an update on Utah's Unified Transportation Plan. Julie.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Andrew. So as you probably heard us say before, Utah is unique in our unified transportation plan. Our state's approach to planning, delivering, and transportation system provides us with a really solid foundation for both current and future decision-making. And our unified plan approach means that we look ahead to assess challenges and identify opportunities. We're making a plan, and that we, as our policymakers, our transportation agencies, our local communities, the public, and other major stakeholders, and we're taking action on these plans. The Unified Transportation Plan, it looks 30 years down the road. We bring all transportation agencies together. That includes the Cash MPO, Dixie MPO, the Mountain Land Associations, the government, UDOT, UTA, and the Wasatch Front Regional Council to the same table to work through shared financial and growth assumptions. We have a shared definition of needs and resources, and we share planning horizons. And so we also do this for all of the transportation modes, whether that's roads, transit, or active transportation. So our unified plan partners, we coordinate, you can see here there's one subcommittee missing from this graphic, but 7 subcommittees, and we're coordinating on financial assumptions, performance of the system, safety, mapping, active transportation planning, communicating the plan and its benefits. And the last subcommittee that's missing here is a disruptive forces or new technology subcommittee. And so through the development of the unified plan, we also work with our elected leaders, such as yourself here as JPAC, to make good decisions to deliver a system that supports our communities, our commerce, and our quality of life. So you've heard a lot about the unified plan, but I want to highlight 2 things that are new to this 2023 to 2050 unified plan. One is that the planning partners are elevating active transportation. This includes a better understanding of the cost of projects, revenues that are going towards active transportation, and we anticipate to constrain active transportation projects by available revenue, the same way we have been doing for roads and transit, so we can get a better understanding of our needs and what we can afford for bicycling and pedestrians. And then the second new element to this year's unified plan is replacing greater emphasis on the exploration of uncertainty in transportation. This includes changing travel patterns that we've seen over the past few years, technological advances such as connected and autonomous vehicles, impacts on federal funding and other state funding, such as how the road usage charge may impact funding or change travel. So those are 2 key elements that are new to this unified plan. And as far as when you might expect to see the 2023 to 2050 Unified Transportation Plan, we're making progress. We're on track for the MPOs to adopt the regional transportation plan and for the statewide transportation plan to be done in spring and summer of next year. When those are completed, we'll finalize the unified plan, its documents, websites, mapping, all of the normal channels that you can explore the unified plan and its benefits in the fall of next year. So I know that was quick, but before I turn to Eileen Barron from UDOT to go over the communications of this next plan, I just wanted to know if I could answer any questions about the process or the timeline.
Julie, I don't have any questions. We'll certainly see if anybody else does, but I do just want to note 2 things. First of all, I want to welcome Mayor Wilson from Salt Lake County, and then also Cameron Deal, Executive Director of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, is on, but by phone. So Cameron, thanks for joining us today. And let's see, does anybody have any questions about the overall Unified Transportation Plan process? And I will note, because I can't let it pass without saying it, that the Unified Transportation Plan is nationally recognized as by the U.S. Department of Transportation, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and others as a model for collaboration. So We should all be proud of that as we work to serve our communities. Any comments or questions on the overall process before we jump into a little bit on communications themes? Okay, hearing none. Eileen, who's the chair of our shared communications subcommittee, take it away, please.
Yeah, I'll just start by, Julie, if you go back to your previous slide, just quickly to let the group know, our plan is to deliver the unified plan as a digital product in the form of a website. It will have a downloadable PDF, and we are kind of holding space to have some kind of hard copy, whether that's an executive summary, one pager, or maybe a folder that would have some printed information inside. Exactly what that would be is not quite determined, but I wanted to let you know and just remind you all that we shifted to a digital deliverable with the last iteration of the plan. And this time we have agreement among the Unified Plan partners to again make that a digital delivery, but have some downloadable components. So if there are things you want to download and print, you will be able to do so. Okay, with that, then I just want to highlight for you where we're headed in terms of themes and messaging for the Unified Transportation Plan. And we've identified 4 key areas, and we have vetted this through our organizations and our communications team. And the first is that the process is sound, and that our planning process is reliable, and therefore you should have good faith in what's found in the unified plan. And we want to implement the plan because we have followed a good process. The second is that the plan works to preserve quality of life in Utah, even as we grow. And this is an important nod to Utah's transportation vision, which was a collaborative process to identify a pathway to quality of life as a joint objective at all levels of local, regional, and statewide planning for transportation statewide. And so we're focused on quality of life, but also acknowledging that growth continues, and that is putting pressure on how people experience traveling within our state. The third is that the plan offers transportation choices for all. And this theme acknowledges multimodal solutions, that we are paying attention to walking, biking, transit, and vehicle movement along with freight and commerce. And so we are at UDOT and starting to talk with our partners more about this concept of all users as a way to think about a broader range of modes of travel, as well as a broader range of people that we need to think very intentionally about how to serve them and what their transportation needs are. And so discussions about equity in transportation also fall under this theme. And then the fourth theme is that the plan builds flexibility into our transportation system in the face of uncertainty. And this is where we can speak to some of those disruptive forces that Julie referenced, and that we are making a flexible plan that can be nimble and responsive as things may unfold and develop, whether that's in economics or in technology or in travel patterns as we continue to come out of the COVID pandemic and see different ways of working and interacting with each other. So that's a quick snapshot. The fifth sort of item here at the bottom is about transportation and its relationship to our state economy. And we're going to kind of continue to keep a close eye on how we talk about economic conditions in relationship to these 4 themes. We're kind of doing a dance back and forth about, is the economic considerations its own theme, or do we weave it in? And at this point, I think we're going to be weaving it into these other 4 areas, but we're going to kind of make that an ongoing conversation and keep an eye on how the economic considerations and discussion interplays with each of these 4 key themes. So that is where we're headed in terms of a guiding narrative for the next iteration of the Unified Plan. With that, any questions or comments before we move on in the agenda today?
Eileen, thank you very much. Let's get some feedback about what people think about these themes. And let me offer one comment before we do that. Later in the agenda, we're going to be joined by Laura Hansen from GOPB, and she's going to talk with us about the statewide growth conversation that is kicking off. One of the aspects of that is to get at the very simple point, which is almost a pre-theme, considering this list of, we have a plan. I think a lot of you and local elected officials probably confront that your constituents may not be aware that there is planning for the future, as Utah deals with being the fastest growing state in the nation over the past 10 years. So the fact that we even have a unified transportation plan is probably one of the sort of sub-themes or pre-themes we need to hit. Let's get some reactions to these communications themes, please. Or silence can simply mean these look good.
They do look good, Andrew. I think these, first of all, I appreciate all the work that's done. And I think as we go forward, we all have a vested interest in making sure this communication is done effectively, because I think we're all sort of struggling a little bit from how people perceive what we haven't done versus what we've done. And sometimes we're our own harshest critics. And I think when we attend things nationally, everybody keeps looking at us for all the good things we do, and we sometimes don't recognize it in our own house. So.
Thanks, Carlton. Okay. Any other thoughts about this before we move on? All right. Eileen, thanks to you and to all the folks working in the communications group for the Unified Transportation Plan. Now, you noted the last piece that Eileen highlighted was the how transportation and the Unified Transportation Plan helps address economics and provide economic benefits for all Utahns. That leads us right into the next item, which is a discussion about analyzing the economic impacts of transportation. So I'm going to turn to Ted Knowlton from WFRC to talk about this. Ted?
All right, thanks, Andrew. And because I am in a room with other people, I just need a thumbs up if the audio is good.
It sounds good. We can see you directly and hear you. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Well, the partnership that represents the Unified Plan, we have over the previous two plans have sought to convey, hey, there's a lot of incredible economic benefit from our transportation plan. And I'm going to show you briefly the high point of our last study. And then our intention now is to update that study and then perhaps to drill down and go deeper on a few issues that we have not looked at before. So this is how you find this economic benefit work that we have done in the past. I'm going to share my screen and keep my fingers crossed because things always are funky. So here you see Utah's Unified Transportation Plan, the website. And if you scroll down just a little bit on the lower right here is benefits of the Unified Plan. And after you click on that, I'll go and pull up the next tab. After you click on that, you scroll down, a third of the way down the page, and you come to the economic impact created by the Unified Plan. Now, if you've looked at these kinds of studies around the country, the most common thing that people look at is what's the benefit of the actual construction? You're spending money to employ contractors and the like, and that money flows through the economy. And that is this orange piece of these two bars, or the yellow piece of these two bars. What's the impact in terms of gross domestic product over the lifespan of the plan, or the benefit in terms of additional job creation over the lifespan of the plan? Our intention has been and will be to extend well beyond that to, in particular, look at transportation efficiency. This is this question of when you save people time because they can get to their destinations more efficiently, and they're on well-maintained roads that reduces the wear and tear in their cars, or they can even, you know, work and be productive while they're in a train or a bus. Those kinds of things, that transportation efficiency, that's this blue box. A couple of the innovative things that we did in the previous time, and we will plan to do again, are represented by the gray and the red items. This business attraction is this question of, by having a well-functioning transportation system planned for and executed through the unified plan, how much does that enable us to attract firms to Utah that may not otherwise come? And that is that component of this study. And then the market access is this interesting question of, through the combination of efficient transportation on the one hand and coordinated land development patterns on the other that help us get to more destinations more easily. We have this term called access to opportunities for that. But through better access to opportunities, transportation and land use working together, how much more effective or efficient are our businesses? And that's this orange bar. So it's a really strong argument grounded in really sophisticated economic models that tells this story. We plan to redo this for this upcoming unified plan. And then our intention is, we're in the early stages of exploring this, is to go beyond this, perhaps in a companion study in which we look at what are the benefits, let's say from our from public transportation and active transportation in particular, on our air quality, or on engendering efficient land use patterns that help us reuse our infrastructure, or perhaps on helping those with limited means get to where they want to go in a cost-effective way. And so we may, our intention is to look at and drill down on those quality of life benefits that perhaps in particular derive from public transportation and active transportation. So that's the overview of what we have done and where we plan to go. And, you know, love any feedback or questions on this, and also would love to have you all use this as it becomes available to share the story of the benefits of our plan.
And Ted, I'll just note, as usual, the work on this will be done collaboratively among the transportation agencies, and also with the involvement of the Gardner Policy Institute, and likely some other GOPB, and likely some other folks that work in this transportation infrastructure and economics space to produce some real good analysis. Any comments or questions for Ted about economic impacts of transportation analysis? Okay, Ted, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We're going to keep on rolling. Next hot topic is transportation electrification updates. And for this one, we're going to ask both UDOT and UTA to share some information about this topic. And either, I know Carlton, you're talking for UTA, and I think Ben Hewitt, are you talking for UDOT on this item? So whichever of you would like to jump in, go right ahead.
Go ahead, Carlton.
Okay, let me share a screen real quick here. Let's see. Yeah. We have, let me on that, sorry. We have coming up on September the 23rd, a electrification forum. What we've noticed in our planning and our collaboration with Utah Power and, or excuse me, Rocky Mountain Power, that aged me, that there's a lot of need to coordinate, similar to the unified plan, how we look at electrification and how we approach some of these topics in the future. And felt like it would be good to start that conversation with the forum, and want to invite everybody to be there. I'll put a link to how you can register in the chat here when I'm done. And we have Representative Blake Moore who will be keynoting that for us, but we welcome that. I think with that, just briefly, if you watched the news this morning in California, because of the heat and some of the challenges with that, Governor Newsom has asked people who have electric cars not to charge their cars between the hours of 4 and 9 o'clock. And I think as we look at those issues, those will increasingly come upon us. We've at UTA have devised a fleet strategy as we look to hopefully get to renewable vehicles, electric vehicles in 20 years, trying to get half of our fleet to electric buses, but it's not without its challenges. So we're going through a process and including in our apprenticeship program and training mechanics to be able to fix these vehicles, what it would take to actually have the infrastructure to support these vehicles, knowing that these are 12-year assets and that having a variety similar to the experience I just mentioned, propulsion modes are in our best long-term value to be able to have some resiliency. We are currently asking for comment on our fleet strategy. Later this fall, we're planning to adopt that, and I'll put this link that sort of shows how we're looking at modes, and would welcome any comments from our stakeholders as we get to that point. Ben, thanks.
Carlton, just remind us real quick the date again of the electrification forum.
Friday, September the 23rd, and it will be at UTA's offices in our Promontory Summit area. And I'll put a link in the chat about where people can find more information on any of these things I talked about.
Okay, that's great, Carlton. Thanks. Ben, on the UDOT side.
Yeah, thank you. So I just have a couple of key points on a new formula program with the new infrastructure bill. So it's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or NEVI. So some of you may have heard of that. I don't have any graphics or anything, so I'm just going to hit a few key points of that program. But it's a new formula program. Utah is going to receive approximately $35 million over the 5 years, or over the life of the new act or bill. The purpose of that is to build electric vehicle charging infrastructure on alternative fuel corridors. So within Utah, that is mostly freeways. There is a couple, I think US 6, and then a portion of US 191 that is designated as an alternative fuel corridor. But the program has a requirement of building fast DC chargers every 50 miles along those alternative fuel corridors. That's the goal of it. And to unlock the first year of the funding, states were required to submit and get approved a NEVI plan that talks about how you're going to do it and where and things like that. So that was due on August 1st. Utah did submit. So it was UDOT and partnership between UDOT and the Utah Office of Energy Development were required to submit that plan. So we did submit that plan, and it is being reviewed and approved by the Federal Joint Office of, Energy and Transportation, a joint office that was created for this purpose. So it's currently under review. One of the aspects of that is to look at some potential discretionary exceptions to that strict 50-mile spacing in certain areas. There's a handful of areas throughout our state, especially in rural states, where it might make more sense at 55 miles or 60 miles, depending on city locations or rest stop locations, things like that. So the Utah plan did have some discretionary exception requests, and there has been some back and forth with that joint office on understanding those. A couple other key points with this program. A lot of focus on rural areas with the interstates, because that's some of the areas that are hard to get with the public sector. The goal is to reduce that range anxiety for electric vehicles when you're traveling these long corridors. And I think long-term, one of the aspects of this is to work with public-private partnerships especially for long-term operation and maintenance of these chargers. And then one other thing, this is not to be confused with, there are going to be some future discretionary grant programs related to electric vehicle charging, I think specifically in like community charging. So that would be more applicable to some of the schools and libraries and things like that for the non-fast DC long trip charging goals. So there are going to be a few discretionary programs come out in the future. So I know that was kind of a lot of content, but any questions on the NEVI program?
Hey, Andrew, if I could add something to what Ben said he mentioned that the plan is being reviewed by the joint office, and it is our office. Eventually the approval will come from the division here in Utah. So
okay.
In our discussions with the joint office, they really liked UDOT's plan. They think they're going to be like the unified plan. They may be showcasing it to other states so they can incorporate some of the items that UDOT did. So we expect approval of the plan fairly soon. And another thing related to the NEVI or Natural Electric Vehicle Network, one of the things that we are hearing is that there may not be these chargers that will comply with Buy America requirements, which basically require that the components be sourced and manufactured in the United States. So Federal Highways has come out with a waiver notice. We will be we published on the Federal Register a waiver to waive Buy America for the chargers and the components for the first couple of years. So that's just for your information. That should help the states as they try to procure these charging stations, these chargers.
Thank you.
Ivan, thank you. Ben, thank you. And Carlton, thank you. Any other comments or questions about electrification in transportation in Utah? Okay, moving right along. Thank you very much. Our next item is an update on the TIF, Transportation Investment Fund, and TTIF, Transit Transportation Investment Fund prioritization. And I think for this one, we're going to go, Ben, right back to you. Is that right?
I think so. Yep. I'm going to try to share my screen. I do have a little presentation, quick few slides on this one.
As he's doing this, everybody remembers, Ben, maybe you were going to do this, but this is the state funding that comes out of state sales tax that goes for state road and transit capacity projects. So enhancing the capacity of our transportation system. Ben.
Are you seeing that slide?
We are. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So this is I'll just do a quick a few slides on this. So UDOT is in the process right now of looking at making some updates to the prioritization process. I said process too many times already. So just a quick reminder, this is probably it probably shows stuff that some of you already know, but there's a capacity project. There's a couple of capacity project funding programs that we're talking about: Transportation Investment Fund, or TIF, and then the Transit Transportation Investment Fund, TTIF. And within those two funding types, there are different eligible project types. So highway and active transportation on the TIF side, and transit and first and last mile connections on the TTIF side. So then, because of those different funding types and the different project types, we have 4 decision support models that help in the prioritization process. So TIF highway, TIF active, TTIF transit, and TTIF first last mile. So we've had this process. Many of you have seen some of the rankings and lists that come out of these decision support models. They're all based on this multimodal framework that was developed through the Utah Transportation Vision process. So good health, strong economy, better mobility, and connected communities. These outcome areas are shared across all of those decision support models. And then some of the measures underneath each one of those areas are specific to the project type. So those measures are mainly the focus of this, looking at possibly making some updates to the prioritization process. So in looking at this, I just wanted to share a couple key outcomes or intended outcomes is through, using this process and then getting feedback and learning some lessons and everything. Some of the things that the goals are to look for ways to simplify and streamline some of the measures, some of the criteria, do a reevaluation of the ranking methodology. It was the current one is based on a relative ranking methodology, which can be, it's got pros and cons. And so looking at that during this process update, there, like as always, there's some opportunity to integrate some new data sources, some better data as we keep moving forward. One of the exciting areas is this was always a goal, is to keep incorporating more outcome-based measures instead of just measures that look at existing problems. It's more of what the project's actually going to help fix. I think that's always been a goal of the prioritization process. Institutionalize some of the processes and timeframes where we've kind of had to make up some stuff as we go when you're doing it for the first time. And so we're hoping to formalize some of the timeframes and get those more documented. And the last bullet is kind of a subset of that. Institutionalize the process is we're going to take this opportunity to try to sync this up with the timing of the unified plan updates. So this is perfect timing right now as the unified plan is being worked on, the next version of it. And we're, the goal is to try to have these hit at about the same time and then get on that cycle of being able to time that. So I'll just share a quick current draft timeline for the update. We are going to do a check-in with the commission. This is a transportation commission process. So we're going to do our initial check-in with them at this upcoming September commission meeting. And then right following that, we're going to start doing some stakeholder engagement with our partners, MPOs, transit agencies like we've done before. Then some model rework and testing. And then with the goal of trying to get this finalized by the June 2023 timeframe that allows it to be synced up with that long-range plan update. So with that, I do include some contact information here for our lead at UDOT, Stephanie Tomlin. She's in the planning division. And so her email is here, and she's probably going to be the one that's reaching out to set up this stakeholder engagement that's going to happen here in the next little bit. So anyway, I know that was quick, but just wanted to give everybody a quick heads up on that.
Ben, thank you very much. A lot of work goes into building these models, and it's really critical work for the programming prioritization of significant amounts of funding, public funding into our transportation system. Let's see if anybody has any comments or questions. And I see Commissioner Elmquist, you have a hand up.
Yes, thanks, Andrew. A real quick question, new to this. I want to thank everybody who's brought millions and millions of dollars to Southern Utah, and we appreciate that. We've had millions and millions of visitors that they all want to be able to get from A to B. Quick question, the ADA requirements in certain areas of our trail system are coming up against the DNR. Now, I noticed you had accessibility and connectivity between communities. For example, we have Hurricane building a trail right up to our Confluence Park, and we have Tokerville building a trail up to Confluence Park. And in the middle is this blockage. And for it to be ADA compliant, we need to have some surface that they can be on. But then we run headlong into the requirement of this conservation area, or at least the requirement to keep it sort of a wild and historic area. And not every one of you have been to Confluence Park, I get it, but it has historic buildings on it, but it has ag land, but federal dollars and some state dollars were used to purchase it. So they had certain rules they put on it, and one of them was nothing paved. Well, there's existing roads and trails all over the place, And if we're going to say to the ADA group, we don't want you going through the park, it also blocks the ability to link two major trails. So I'm just bringing that up because this, with all the planning we do clear out to 2060, we probably should at some point address where, and we have the ability to tell the feds, okay, we can allow this surface in here if we can get the DNR lawyers to agree. So I'm hoping everyone talks about connectivity and alternative transportation with bikes and walking and what have you. We just have to do some legal angioplasty to get through this blockage. Does that make sense? So I just wanted to bring it up so it broadens the understanding. I don't know if any DNRs are on this or even if they're on our JPAC, but if we can reach out to eventually to say, hey, let's look at the transportation plan as a whole and how we accommodate ADA, especially in our sensitive areas, that'd be great.
Commissioner, thanks. I'm not sure if Ben, you wanted to respond to that or just take that understanding as we move forward.
Yeah, I think we'll just look for opportunities to further understand some of those types of issues as we work through. Yeah.
Ben, next time you're down here, we'll take a field trip. I think you're due probably first snowfall.
Be perfect.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Commissioner. Of course, Myron, I know, is with us here and I'm sure is aware of these issues and I know UDOT has their Region 4 folks that work on the ground in your area as well. Cameron, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Andrew. My question for you, Ben, is just about the intersection with House Bill 462 from last session and the prioritization process with the TIF and TTIF. One new policy objective within House Bill 462 as it relates to the prioritization process is what we call in shorthand the above and beyond provisions. So in order for cities to be eligible for TIF and TTIF, they have to meet certain criteria. They have to select a certain number of menu items, and then, but if they select more than that, 2 additional menu items or more, then they were eligible for enhanced prioritization. I was just curious if you had an update about what that actually looks like on the implementation side, or if you're still working through that process. And I'm asking in part because that concept continues to come up at the Capitol, and I'm always anxious about copying and pasting one policy idea to another policy conversation until we know if the initial policy concept has worked.
No, thank you. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And yeah, that will be part. It's not. We don't know what that looks like exactly yet, but that will be part of this update. There's that the notice of prioritization that would come through that. I think it's workforce services or however. I'd have to review, but yeah, the House bill that you mentioned there, that would be part of. We will incorporate that into the prioritization process, and we'll have to coordinate with the partners and stakeholders on what that looks like, whether it's, how much we'll make a recommendation to the commission on if that's if there's extra points or, for lack of a better term, or if it's something outside of the model that gets taken into consideration. But that will need to be addressed with this update. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Well, please feel free to use me or the league or WFRC or those of us who are involved in crafting 462 as a resource as you are working through what that actually looks like on the ground. So thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Cam, thanks for bringing that up. And just to make sure everybody's on the same page here, we're not talking about UDOT giving money to cities and counties in this discussion. We're talking about the location of projects that UDOT is doing for TIF and TTIF, and the possibility that in that prioritization process that they may give enhanced consideration to projects that are in communities that have gone above and beyond on their moderate income housing. That's what the legislation authorized, and then the method for doing that is left to the commission to determine. But Ben, as you noted, there's going to be stakeholder engagement is a really important part of that. And so we'll all have the opportunity to be aware and provide comment as that goes forward. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's keep on rolling unless there's any other questions for Ben. Okay, not seeing any. Okay, our next topic is joint statewide grid study. And we're going to go to Andrew Jackson from Mountain Land Association of Governments. Andrew.
Great, and I'm just going to share my screen here real quick, I think. There we go. This is just the same presentation that I gave at.
Andrew, we're not seeing your presentation yet. At least I'm not.
Okay. I'm sharing my screen. Let's see. It's counting down.
Ah, there we go.
Now, can you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is just the same presentation that I gave at Transportation Interim last week or so. And I've got a bunch of slides in here that we're not going to use, but if people have questions, at least I could go back to those slides. So we're going to jump like way through this really quick and go to our grid system. And I guess before I get started though, I wanted just to point out and acknowledge how much we really appreciate our partners with Federal Highways, the other MPOs, the RPOs, the Transit Authority, and of course, Carlos and UDOT. Everybody's just always so wonderful to work with, and we really appreciate that. We'll just jump right into this grid system. I was reminded earlier today when I was driving around, I was driving on a road that I drive on all the time, and it's rarely busy, but today it was really packed with cars. And I was trying to figure out why it was like that, if it was a different time that I was driving or whatever. And then I realized that one of the parallel roads had an accident on it. And so everybody was diverting to this other road. So sometimes when we have congestion issues on transportation, the problem isn't with that facility, but the problem may be with an adjacent facility. For instance, I-15 in the Linden American Fork Range area in Utah County, it's really congested there, but part of that reason is because we don't have a good local grid system. And so people who are making local trips hop onto I-15 and it crowds that up. And so oftentimes a problem in one area manifests itself in another area. This grid system here is based off of ITE's, I guess their recommended or ideal spacing that shows where we should have freeways, principal arterials, minor arterials, collectors, et cetera, and how if we have that grid system, we can function very efficiently. There's different settlement patterns that happen across the US. We have the French long lot system, we've got the Spanish diagonal system, and we've got the British grid system. And they each have their pluses and minuses, but we're seeing through here that we get a lot of benefit from having this grid system. If we look at this plaid grid system, and we have that on the left side, and then we have reality in Salt Lake County, we can see that a lot of areas in Salt Lake County come pretty close. I mean, we don't have to have exactitude, but you know, we've got some areas that are really close to this ideal grid, and some of those areas where the grid may be lacking or is insufficient are some of the areas where we see a lot of the congestion. Then if we take this out to Utah County, we've got a lot of missing grid system in Utah County versus what at ideal build out it would be. And this creates, again, this burden on some roads versus other roads. And it has to do with how Salt Lake County and Utah County grew. But as we're looking at this grid system and how to have this connectivity, we were talking with some legislators, and we're talking about having a grid study done, focusing mainly on the MPOs and the RPOs, and looking at that grid system and where that grid is missing or insufficient. And then also looking at ownership of those different facilities. So for instance, we have in Southern Utah County, we have a state route that has maybe at best on a good day, 1,000 vehicles, and several of those are tractors. And we have other city roads that have substantial traffic on them, and yet they're local roads, city roads. So there's several parts to this look. One is to look at the grid system and see where we're lacking in this grid. The second is to look at ownership. And so we might have to rebalance the portfolio of which roads are state roads, which roads are county roads, which roads are city roads. And then at some point, we'll also maybe have to look at what that means for funding. The first part of this will just be looking at that grid system and moving that along. And maybe we get through that study and we find out we actually don't need to do anything. We're fine how we are. That's great. But then if not, and it says, okay, now we need to rebalance these so that most of the traffic is on state roads. I think the 70% that we try and shoot at. What would we need to do that and have those state roads be at that higher level? And then, of course, the next step would be to look at funding. And I know there's a lot of things that have gone into the history of transportation funding, and I'm not naive enough to think that it could easily be solved in a quick study, but we're probably looking at having to ask this next legislative session to start with a primary study on just the grid system itself. So I guess that's my spiel. And of course, it would also include in there, as we look at these different facilities, the freeways, arterials, collectors, local roads, and we have the transit component as well, front runner being parallel to a freeway system, tracks BRT to the arterials, the bus system, collectors, and the local roads would see a micro transit or paratransit with that first and last mile. And then we've got the different types of funding, A, B, C, tax funding, sales tax, property tax, general fund, and there's just a commingling of that. But we want to look at that as well in a future study. Right now, it's just looking at that grid system. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, Andrew, thank you very much. And so first of all, apologies to everybody for having to look at two of me for the last few minutes. But Andrew, thank you. And I'll just emphasize the real importance of the grid and then also street connectivity, critical to the functioning of our transportation system. And Andrew, you noted, this is not just about roads, but it's about roadways for driving, transit, and then also active transportation, the connections and the gridded system, and comparing and contrasting. And you did note that Salt Lake County has more of a grid system, but I know there's communities represented on here today that would certainly suggest that at least our east-west connections in Salt Lake County, we need to keep working on those. So these are important topics for all of us.
Exactly. Maybe I could just point out real quick then with the active transportation, when we did the Murdoch Canal Trail, that was really a significant jump forward in active transportation. We were able to use some CMAQ funding and a few other funding sources because we did surveys and found out there are actually people who commute between Orem and Lehigh or back and forth on that trail. And so the Murdoch Canal Trail for us is the I-15 of active transportation. But that's a great point as well. I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments on this?
Andrew, I've got a quick comment. I love this, Andrew Jackson, and then thank you for bringing it forward. And Andrew Gruber alluded to this, but this is one of these strategies that it benefits every mode of transportation. And I won't elaborate on that, but I did want to put in a plug for a resource that you may not necessarily know about. It's called the Utah Street Connectivity Guide, and it is more aimed at local governments to help them quantify benefits and think through strategies to improve connectivity. And it was brought to you by your friendly neighborhood unified plan partners. So I just wanted to put in a little plug for that. It is located in the chat.
Perfect, thank you.
Ted, thanks. Oh, Carlton.
Yeah, I was just, first I was going to joke that some communities are getting punished for leaving the plat of Zion, but the reality of it is for us in transit, as we've been relooking at our routes, those communities that have a grid system, the fixed route busing is far more effective and usually harvests a lot more ridership. And so it does get challenging. And as we've looked at going back and substituting out our on-demand service in lieu of some poor performing bus routes, the reality is those communities, the way they're configured, it would never lend itself well to fixed route busing. So, especially as we look at future opportunities, those all play into how well you can service a community with transit based on how those street layouts are done.
Just a note on that plat of Zion, Carlton, Lehigh, when they were starting up, the church leaders asked them to do the grid system with wide roads like you'd find in Manti, Mount Pleasant, and the bishop there said, we're a small community, we're not going to do that. And so that's the reason why Lehigh Main Street was so narrow and it caused so many problems. If they would have followed that plat, you would have a much wider Main Street. You wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we did.
That's funny. Thank you.
Interesting. And if some people on this Zoom may be wondering, what is the plat of Zion? Because not everybody knows about it. Maybe one of our resident historians will drop something in the chat to show something about that. Just maybe.
I'll do it.
All right, great, Carlton. Okay, let's move on then to our next topic. As we're coming into third base on this meeting, the next topic is UEOC transportation related issues, and Carlos and I and perhaps Mayor Ramsey will give a brief update on this. The UEOC Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. In fact, I'm not going to say more. Carlos, I'm just going to turn to you, and Mayor Ramsey, you're both members of the UEOC, and just give a quick update on what's happening with UEOC related to transportation, please.
Mayor, do you want to start or would you like me?
Well, I'm happy to have you start. It's always good to hear from you. And as one of the co-chairs of the Growth and Transportation Subcommittee, I say take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mayor. And Andrew, also Commissioner Forer is also a member of the Unified
on behalf
Commission
of
as
UX.
well.
Thank you.
And I don't know if we're missing anyone else, but I think that might be it. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I'll be real quick. So the Unified Commission, Opportunity Commission, really was stood up last year by the legislature, and did a lot of work during last year's interim, and quite a few bills were adopted by the legislature. Having the governor as chair and the president, the speaker, as members of this commission, I think adds a little bit of emphasis to the recommendations that come out of it. So this year, the commission decided to stand up several different, I'll call them working groups. And those working groups then did what most working groups did, is they then split up into and formed more committees. And 3 different committees were stood up by the Growth and Transportation. One was on transportation funding. The other was on statewide infrastructure investment visioning. And then one on regional growth alignment. And we had reports out. The working group met yesterday, and we had reports out from the 3 chairs that chaired those subgroups. And it's starting to feel, I think there was, well, first of all, just the amount of time and the amount of people that are participating in this is pretty impressive. A lot of people putting a lot of time, a lot of thought, And we absolutely went through the storming period for a couple months where it kind of felt like, I don't know where we're going. It doesn't feel like things are moving, and things that were being thrown out were kind of, pretty far in outfield. And it's feeling like, the pitches are getting closer to the strike zone right now with the reports we had from the 3 different subgroups. The transportation funding one reported out yesterday. They did a deep dive review of what came out of the legislative study group interim committee meeting in, I think, Andrew, it was 2017 when that group was met, and basically refreshed some of the ideas on there. But I think the standout items were a fifth of a fifth. The county option sales tax, it's only been taken up by 1 county, and it sunsets next year. And so there was, Andrew's bringing it up. Thank you, Andrew. Is that you? Yeah, it's Andrew.
Yep.
So he brought that. There was a little bit of discussion on the utility fee, and I think everyone's aware that there's some litigation issues going on around that right now. We're going to wait and see. Cameron said it might be coming, decision might be during next year's legislative session. Discussion on the indexing of the motor fuel. When gas prices were going up quite quickly early this spring, we saw some states look towards suspending the motor fuel tax to try to help out their constituents. State of Utah decided not to do that, but we do have an indexing provision that's basically smooth, looking at the last 3-year running average and tying it to CPI. And there was concerns that with the big bump in fuel prices, the amount of that the indexing would drive that change in price. It was probably close to 5 cents of a gas tax increase that could have been implemented in January of this upcoming year. And so there's been discussion, I'll say in the back halls of the legislature. The working group looked at this as well. And, I think there's seems to be consensus forming that prices are coming down, and this isn't the right thing to do at this point. To pull it off becomes a political decision. And the tax commission, John Valentine mentioned that if a decision is going to be made, it would have to be done in a special session during this September interim committee, and I don't think that's going to happen this September. So I think we'll see the indexing continue. As most of you know, it has a 40-cent cap, and so we're going to get to that 40-cent cap here, in a few years or in a few more years, and we'll see where it goes. A little bit of discussion on zero fare, and I think most of us could probably argue both sides of this. There was no votes taken on any of these items right now. So those were listed as kind of the short-term items. There was other long-term items as well, but I won't get into that. We're looking now to really flush out. We've asked the subgroups to flush out some of the details, and then we're going to be meeting again in a couple weeks, and then there's a full meeting of the Unified Economic Commission. I think it's on September 28th, where there'll be reports from the working groups back to the full Unified Commission of what we're coming to, and we're looking probably to the more towards November's meeting, towards having the Unified Commission take votes and positions to try to then send that up to the legislature. So that was one subgroup. The other subgroup on infrastructure investment visioning spent a lot of time looking at the state infrastructure bank and what are those things that can be done by the state to help develop infrastructure, foundational infrastructure, to allow for the additional growth we have coming at us. I think we all know that we're looking at quite a bit of growth, trying to get at least 30% of that growth as infill, and try to create a more compact development so that the existing transportation system, transit and roads are more efficient. And so some discussion around creating a fund within the existing infrastructure bank that is administered here at the department, and the commission makes those decisions, that would maybe help provide financing tools for communities that want to put in sewer water systems to be able to help facilitate that type of growth. Lots of discussion still needs to take place around whether or not that that we're incentivizing the right types of things. And I think Cameron gave a nice, I think, example of how that type of a fund could help out a community that was experiencing rapid growth but did not have the ability to really meet the needs from the sewer perspective, and I think might have been water as well. Some other discussions in that group around. I'll just leave it at that for now. And then Laura and Andrew made a really nice presentation with a lot of detail around the work of looking at the growth and the alignment of our growth. I don't know if Andrew wants to add anything to that or Laura wants to add anything to that right now.
But Carlos, thanks. Just the purpose of the regional growth alignment is to make sure that when there are state policies or investments, they are pointing in the same direction with our shared goals around absorbing our growth in a smart way. So rather than having a transportation investment that points in one direction and a housing investment that points in the other, let's see if we can coordinate those to absorb growth efficiently. Carlos, I just want to, before I turn to Mayor Ramsey for a moment here, I do want to highlight one more thing about the transportation work group. You'll see, if you can see my screen here, right at the upfront, that group acknowledged that, and I'll just read this here, despite the significant funding dedicated to Utah's multimodal transportation system, due to our nation's leading growth, the need for investment in Utah transportation over the next 30 years exceeds the revenues that are currently projected to be available. This is true for state roads and to an even greater extent for transit, active transportation, and local roads. The reason I wanted to highlight that point is because, of course, it ties right back to Utah's Unified Transportation Plan and the work that this group does together. Leif Elder from UDOT is the one who's leading that working group and doing a nice job of doing so. Mayor Ramsey, you participate, of course, on behalf of the league as a member of the UEOC. Do you want to add anything to this description of what the UEOC is doing?
Oh, I think it was very well done. I just want to mention that this UEOC group, the organization, the route, is an additional resource for, as has been mentioned, bringing legislative ideas to the legislature. But I think it's a very comprehensive process, and I'm grateful for that. There are so many good stakeholders, key stakeholders and experts at the table working on these challenges that we face as we continue to be the fastest growing state in the nation. And as we look long term, and as we discuss even what Lara is going to discuss in a few minutes about the conversation that we'll have with residents across the state about growth, being able to work collaboratively throughout the year, which is what's happening, so that we have done a lot of the vetting and given proper time to vet some of the ideas before they go to the legislature. I think that helps us come up with better policies. I do think there's a lot of good work being done. It's hard work, and it's a lot of hours, a lot of people spending a lot of hours on this, but I do think it's going to help us come to good outcomes that then can be recommended to the legislature with hopefully their understanding that there's a lot of legislators even involved, right, in these working groups and the various subcommittees and things, but important work is taking place, and I just appreciate everyone who's working on it. I'm grateful for the chance to get to be part of it. But if you're not really familiar with the work that's being done, just know it is a very comprehensive effort, bringing representatives from all stakeholders to the table to try to come up with these best plans, specifically as we look for transportation funding and methods. We know we can't, and I'm sure that Director Braceras would just say, yep, I've been saying that for years. We can't just continue to build lane miles. There's a lot of things that need to happen to make sure that we have room to accommodate our growth and to maintain our quality of life as we look at all different forms of transportation and transit. And so thanks to everyone who's part of that work. We'll just keep plugging away at trying to do hard things and accomplish hard things.
Mayor Ramsey, thank
Andrew?
you. Yeah, Carlos.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to maybe emphasize a point that the mayor made that I think adds to the ability of these working groups and the commission to get stuff done through the legislature. So we have 3 co-chairs. I've never seen something called co-chairs, but we have 3 of us. It's myself, Senator Colmore, and Representative Schultz of this working group. But we also have Representative Christofferson and Senator Harper as members of the group as well. And that's just this one working group. And so the amount of legislators that are participating in this, and I think at the end of the day, owning what comes out of this, I think will be a big part of the success.
Carlos, thanks. And I'll note there are 7, I think, working groups through growth and transportation is one of 7 through the UEOC. Also, none of the recommendations are final yet. They are being worked on. So if anybody wants to take a look at anything that we've flashed up on the screen, please just let us know. We're more than happy to share that with you if you haven't seen it already, because this is a work in progress. Mayor Wilson.
Thanks. Well, yeah, and I think there's one that I'd like to flag that our county would like to be more directly involved in, and that's discussions around the 5th corridor. I mean, I have been working with my staff, understanding that the clock is ticking and that there's some complex issues under consideration, including transportation, but many others that our county council is currently addressing. And with that decision before us, I just think there needs to be more of a direct engagement because, you know, we're representing 1/3 of the state's population. We have, you know, a need for, I think, my staff and team to be engaged so that we can land. We have had conversations with UTA. The current 5th is very limited in its use, and that's kind of the world we're living in, is to better understand where and how we would move forward a recommendation, we meaning my administration, to the county council. You know, we had an internal process and plans around that. And then now there's appropriately, I'm sure, a more complex series of demands that have emerged since the initial authorization. So anyway, we've had a few things going on, including COVID the past couple of years, and here we are. So I think that time is of the essence for that call because of the complexity around what would need to be done and the time frame. You know, if there's to be an extension, that's fine, but I think we and I would ask that Salt Lake County and maybe some of the other counties feel this way, but ultimately the critical moment occurs at the Salt Lake County Council in my case, and having gone down that road myself as a council member, those are not simple. Yeah, it's one of the most complex challenges, right, is to decide to impose an additional fee on the public. So just some very direct thoughts, because we got everyone in the room. Please invite us to the table on those conversations, because you know, I think if not, we're going to not be in a position to be very helpful.
Mayor, I believe your economic development director is a member of this working group.
Yeah, and I think that's a miss on our part, and we've figured that out, Carlos, just in the last couple of weeks. We need to get Helen and probably Catherine Cantor or Dina at the table. I just think the composition of, I mean, that's an internal issue. We're a large government. We're got a lot going on, and we've corrected that piece. But this particular issue is going to need some direct engagement by me sooner than later. But we will find a way to get Helen and Catherine more involved.
That would be wonderful, Mayor. There's no limitation. We'd love to have everyone at the table. So,
Mayor, thank you. I really appreciate your noting that. And this goes for Salt Lake County and then for the other counties that have the authority to do these county imposed local options. This one we're talking about is 0.20 for transit. The authorization expires right now in law, June 30th, 2023. So does that deadline need to be moved back or eliminated perhaps? Is 0.20 the right rate, or perhaps it should be a 0.25 consistent with the other quarters? And should it be all for transit, or perhaps should there be some flexibility that some of it could be used by counties or cities? These are critical conversations, but Mayor, thank you, because as the entity that is authorized to impose, nothing can or should happen in dialogue about these without you and the counties directly involved. So let's make sure that that is happening. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else on legislative issues that anybody wants to bring up here? Okay, I'll just note at the last JPAC meeting, we shared with everybody an overview of big picture transportation funding and finance in Utah. And then that also was presented at the last Transportation Interim Committee meeting. So you got to hear it first before it went to Transportation Interim, everybody. All right, we do have two more items. I'm just going to say, I think we're going to push a little bit past our 1:30 timeframe. Our next item here is a really interesting item that has been talked about before. And I see Laura Hansen with GOPB, the State Planning Coordinator, and our friend is on with us to talk for a few minutes about the statewide growth conversation. Laura, I'll turn it to you.
Great, Andrew, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for letting me interlope with your meeting. It's nice to be back at JPAC, so good to see you all. So we are working on a project that we're calling right now, for lack of a better term or better branding, that we're still working on, a statewide growth conversation. And this was a recommendation that came out of the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission, actually. It was funded in the 2002 general session by the legislature with the great support of many of the people on this phone call. We're so appreciative of that. We're working with a bunch of different entities on this. GOPB is sort of the overall facilitator of the process, but many other partners are involved, including Wasatch Front Regional Council, the League, UAC, Envision Utah, the Gardner Policy Institute, the Utah Land Use Institute, and then staff from UDOT and many other groups. So the basic idea here is Utah is growing really rapidly. And a lot of Utahns are feeling some uneasiness as a result. And we want to be able to clearly communicate a message that there are lots of different possible futures for Utah, and we can be in the driver's seat and guide growth to achieve the kind of future that we want. So the outcomes that we're trying to, what we hope we accomplish with this effort are a couple-fold. The first, we want to establish and promote a baseline set of facts about growth so that we all have the same starting point. We're all talking from the same factual basis. So, that means this isn't new. Utah's been growing continually for a long time. It is not realistic to just stop growing, which a lot of folks I'm hearing in the community are saying, let's just slow things down. Let's just, stop rolling out the red carpet. That's not really realistic. And then the way we design our communities really matters on the way that we accommodate new growth. The way that's designed makes a big difference on how it feels within the community. So number one, baseline growth facts. Number two, we want to share with the public and remind decision makers that we have really great plans in place to guide this growth. We've talked about the Unified Transportation Plan in this meeting already. So we want to remind folks that we have those and why they've been effective in the past and why they're going to be good tools for us moving forward. And then we want to share all of this through two different tracks. The first will be targeting decision makers. And we really want to focus on policy moves. What's the guidance, the best practices, the policy decisions that local decision makers can implement to guide growth in the way that we want. And so we're calling these the big moves. Some of those may be legislative changes. Some of those may be things that need to be implemented at the local level. And then the second track is working with the public. And our goal here really is to connect with the hearts and minds of Utahns, make sure we understand what's most important to them, educate them on growth issues, and ultimately, we hope minimize the number of pitchforks that they bring to city council meetings, county council meetings, when local governments work to actually implement these big moves. And so some folks have, said, well, haven't we done these kinds of visioning exercises before? How's this different? And we are trying to make this a very unique process and not something that we have done before. We're not creating a new vision or a new plan, but instead we're talking about how these existing broad visions and plans land within future different growth scenarios. We're going to avoid map-based sort of development pattern-oriented centers or scenarios in favor of more local visualizations, illustrations, and profiles of different communities. So I can see, okay, I live in a suburb of Salt Lake City. What does a community like mine look like with 1,000 more residents? We could put them all in ADUs and maybe it doesn't change that much. We could instead put them along commercial corridors and higher density housing. How does that feel from from a public standpoint, living in a community like that. And we're trying to use different place types that represent different types of Utah communities, from rural Utah all the way to our capital city. And then we're going to really focus on listening to and educating the public, but also providing local government officials with tools to address those. And there will be many opportunities for you all to engage and provide input, not only those of you here on this call, but the people within your communities. And I think that's kind of it in a nutshell. And if we have time, Andrew, I don't know kind of what our schedule looks like, but I would love to ask one question and just have maybe just a couple minutes of dialogue, if that's okay.
Laura, look, this issue is so important, so I hope everybody's okay. Let's just give a few minutes for Laura's one key question, and then we'll get to the next and last item on our agenda. Laura, go ahead.
Great, thanks for indulging me. So if I could pose a question to you, I would ask you, what is the most important thing that residents in your community need to hear through the statewide conversation about growth? What do you wish your communities knew?
And let me be clear, this question is more aimed, I think, at the principally aimed at the elected officials that are on. So if you're a local elected official, what do you think? Laura, ask your question one more time.
Sure. Yeah. And, I would also, if you're not an elected official, you're a member of a community, right? And so what do you think your neighbors need to hear, right? So what is the most important thing that residents from your community need to hear as part or through this statewide growth conversation?
This is Blaine Fackrell from Morgan County. And I think one of them that we have and that I have a big desire for is to help alleviate traffic on our roads by having trails that they can go on. Paved trails, active transportation, ways in which they can get to different locations instead of having to use exactly the same main narrow road that we have on the state highways, and possibly even transit.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Other
I'll go, Laura. So Jeff Silverstream from Mill Creek. I think that that providing information to our residents about the fact that most of this growth is internal, it's our own families, and not invaders from outer space or something like that, will be valuable to help people accept the fact, number one, that we can't just turn this growth off like a spigot. A lot of people think we should just do that and stop growing. And then, secondly, to build, I think, a little more empathy for the people that are actually trying to find housing, so that as we densify, as every growing community does because of land costs, we tolerate that. The other thing I'll say is I think we just need to communicate better that we have a plan for this. We are attempting to accommodate this growth, and that sometimes the transit infrastructure and things like that it's a chicken and egg problem. You can't build it until the people are ready to use it. But I think it helps people be more calm about it. They know that their leaders are thinking about this ahead of time and are planning for it.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Good thoughts.
I think this is Julie Fulmer from Vineyard. I think you could additionally add in just a discussion about, we talk a lot about the throughput and that we can't keep expanding the I-15, but maybe talk about how the throughput models and the cost savings going from billions of dollars to infrastructure to millions when you're talking about transit, and how it can be effective when these grid networks and first and last miles come together, because I think that helps establish why we're putting growth in certain like areas like station area plans. I think it also helps people to understand the cost savings and the use of transit to freeways. And I think that's a helpful point whenever talking about growth.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to clarify and make sure I understood. So, really we're talking about leveraging our existing infrastructure investments and showing that if we provide a connected system with multimodal options, it is cheaper overall and accommodates more people. Is that the gist of what you're saying?
Yeah, and just really emphasize the savings aspect of it and that it's effective. So many people act like nobody's going to use it, but if we can model it and then show its cost savings, I think that'll be a key factor.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Any others? Any of our other local elected officials want to comment on this question?
I'll say something quickly. This is Trent Staggs. For me, it's what I hear most of the time, all redounds back to infrastructure. So yeah, how do we handle that? And not just maybe surface transportation or transit, but also water. That's a big deal. And I think we are getting to the point where it's approaching, I mean, to Mayor Silvestrini's point, I think it's approaching nearly half and half. About half the population growth is relating to in-net migration instead of just, our kids, so to speak. And so the consequences of that, when you have older individuals or say purchase ready people that are already of a demographic age that are buying housing, what type of pressure is that putting on our housing? How does that tie into it is something that I would find interesting. I don't know. And then what solutions do we have for that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I had heard somebody say that in a meeting recently, and it was a total light bulb moment for me, which was, oh my goodness, you're right. These people are not coming in as infants. They're coming in as people looking to buy a home and drive cars. So that's great. Mayor Ramsey, I see your hand raised.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything because a few of you have heard me say this at our Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting, but I think it's good for residents to have an understanding that there are a lot of good plans in place and that the state is working on plans. One thing that I hear quite often is nobody's working on these problems or there's no plan. How come there's no planning? And I think people are just underinformed about the collaborative efforts that are taking place and that we have, such as our state unified transportation plan, our regional transportation plans. Water, there's a lot of work being done on water, but I agree with Mayor Staggs, most people don't know what that is. So I think part of that is it's just helping to inform residents about some of the good work that those of us on this call know is happening, but the general population doesn't realize is happening so much. And then maybe that will help people at least sleep a little bit better at night and be a little bit reassured that there are plans in place, because I think what people are concerned about most is losing their quality of life. People are, I think that's what the fear is. They don't want to lose their quality of life. It's our investment. It's where we put our whole money in our family and our home and everything. We don't want to lose what we've invested in. So I'm just hoping that the conversation will also include additional information on the planning that is taking place.
Well, and while we're talking about the growth that's happening internally, I think we should emphasize we would rather be growing and building than declining, because it's always going in one direction.
Those are all great points. Thank you. Andrew, have we allotted our time probably for this discussion, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I think so. Either that or we go for a lot longer on it. But we won't do that now. But the understanding, of course, is that everybody is going to be able to be involved, and we want everybody to be involved in this statewide growth conversation as we go forward, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for the time on the agenda, and we really look forward to working with you all on these big issues. This is great.
Laura, thanks. You're always welcome with this group. Okay, our last item on the agenda is overview of statewide federal performance measure targets. And I'm looking to UDOT. And who from UDOT is talking about this item? Ryan is raising his hand.
I got this one.
Okay.
Let me share my screen. I'm going to be really quick. I was taught at a young age, don't stand in the way of the end of a meeting or the end of food. So don't make this too painful, but we will be sharing these slides with you guys after the fact. So you're able to make corrective decisions when it comes to that point. Just a quick highlight before we dive into the federal measures. We do have on our UDOT side what we call our strategic direction website. It does have measures that we internally as a state keep, and we report to those a lot internally within the state. These federal measures are going to the feds, just so you know, there may be some a little bit of different numbers between the two, just in case someone goes to the strategic direction website and says, well, Ryan said this. Well, just know these are federal reported measures that we're reporting on right now. The next point that I want to bring up, which is on the next slide, is we've gone through this process for about a year now. We've met with quite a few of the MPOs and reviewed these measures and gotten approval from quite a few of them. There's still a few that we're waiting to get those final improvements to. This is a two-year review going up right now to now setting a 4-year target. So don't get confused with the numbers. It is a 2-year review that just is taking place to now setting a 4-year target. So from now till 2026 is what these measures will go till. I'm not going to dive in too deep into each one of these just because of time, as well as just, like I said, we've already discussed with the majority of the people on this call through the MPO group. So the only thing that we're asking today is a JPAC agreement for moving these targets forward to our internal leaders within UDOT, so they can make the decisions on, moving forward with the performance measures. So it's just a small checkbox that we have. So we're presenting these to you, and then we'll move forward from there.
And Ryan, just to be clear for everybody, so this group JPAC doesn't vote on items. So what Ryan is saying is, hey, does anybody have any questions or concerns about this? Any action that gets taken is taken directly through our individual organizations and UDOT itself. This is more of a check-in to see if anybody has questions or concerns at this point.
Thank you, Andrew. Yep, that is correct. The first target measure the performance measure we're going to be talking about is the infrastructure internally within UDOT, as well as through the MPO groups. We're going to be keeping our same measures, which is a 5% decreasing in the poor and a 50% above 50% in the good category. Again, I'm going to be going through these pretty quick. If there is questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we will reach back out to you. The next one is I went quick through that one. Sorry, this one is our pavement condition through non-interstate NHS routes, which is a less than 10% in the poor category and a greater than 30% in the good category. Then we have our bridge condition. We kept our same targets on this one. It is a greater than 10% in the poor and a less than 40% in the good on NHS. And the reason there may be questions, if there's any spots that were of concerns, we did a quick little bullet at the bottom for people just to read into those and address why we've kept the targets the way they are too. This one is for non-NHS. We have a less than 10 and a greater than 4 in good. This one is percent of person miles traveled on the interstate NHS that are reliable, and we want to have a greater than 80%. The next one is non-interstate NHS that are reliable, is a greater than 65%. Next one is truck travel time reliability. We want to keep it at a 1.4 freight reliability. And then this one is our number of fatalities and serious injuries. It's a reduced by 2.5 per year. This is a measure on a 5-year average. You can read all that down below. I don't need to dive into that. Again, for time's sake, we'll be sharing this with you as well. This is number of fatalities and serious injuries on non-motorized. And it's a reduction of 2.5% per year. And then fatality rate and suspected serious injury rate. This is per 100 million VMT, and it's again a reduction of 2.5% per year. This one is a percent of non-SOV travel. It's a recommendation that we have.
Single occupant vehicle.
Yep, you got it, of non-SOV travel. Just so everybody's aware, there is 2 other areas that we did add to this measure that was not in there before, with Ogden and Provo. And this was done because of the population that was in that specific area. So we have added them to this measure, and we're relaying that across right here. And the last one is the urban area annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capital. And we have recommendations for Ogden, Salt Lake, and Provo at 8, 14, and 7. And the last one that we have is a recommendation by NPO on air quality, the professionals there, and these are their targets they're setting for those. We won't dive too deep into those. And just a final recap that shows, that shows everything that we're recommending and a summary of it. So I appreciate your time. Thank you, Andrew, for letting us be here.
Ryan, the rapidity with which you had to go through this does not indicate how important it is that we do good performance measurement. It's critical to us making good decisions. I just want to make sure that everybody on here understands that, again, the agencies have been working closely with UDOT on the development of these performance measures. So we've had a lot of ability to understand and vet them as we go forward. Having said that, does anybody have anything they want to add or questions about any of these performance measures? And we can, Ryan, suffice to say, we can send information out as a follow-up to this meeting that shares the info you've just presented as well, right?
100%, yes.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay, not seeing any. My friends, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Oh man, we got through a lot today. So many interesting and important topics in the work we do. Isn't it a great thing that we all work together on these issues? I think it is. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to collaborate with all of you. Does anybody have anything else that they want to share generally with the group before we wrap up here? Okay, well, thanks everybody. Our next JPAC meeting is not until December 1st. Location TBD. We've threatened a tour. Maybe that'll happen. We shall see. If anybody has any ideas about that, touch base with us and we can think about it. And again, everybody, thank you and have a great remainder of your day and a terrific Labor Day weekend.